If you're drowning in debt right now and it feels impossible to pay down your loans, I get it because I've been there. A few years ago, I had $100,000 in loans to pay, and it felt like an impossible task to pay down those loans. But guess what? In just 12 months, I paid down the full $100,000. So today I'm going to share with you exactly how I did that. The mindset, the strategy, the steps that I took. I'll share everything with you today. Let's get into it. First, let's talk about how I ended up with $100,000 loans. A few years ago, 8 years ago, thereabouts, I decided to go to business school. I ended up going to Yale for my MBA, and it's an expensive program. I took a loan, so my $100,000 was basically to fund my life in business school, pay my tuition while I went through business school. So that's how I ended up with $100,000 at the beginning of 2020. First thing I did was to change my mindset. The mindset shift is so important on this journey of paying down your debt. I treated my debt as an emergency instead of something that could be with me for the rest of my life or for most of my life. I treated this like an emergency that I needed to resolve immediately. And this changed everything for me. Always thinking about it as an emergency, as something that needed to be resolved fast, was so important in my journey. I am not saying this is exactly what you should do, but for me, it just felt like I could not move forward without first getting to point zero. I looked at it as I was at point minus 100,000 and I needed to get to zero so I could really just launch ahead into what I wanted to do for myself and for my financial future. And for me, that was my why. So speed was such an important thing to me. So now let's talk about the strategy. There are just two things that matter here: income, expenses. That's it. We can narrow it all down to those two things. First thing I did was I got a good job. I'm very grateful for that. I got a job that paid me really well and allowed me to pay my loans. I will say, because sometimes online it seems like 9 to 5s are the worst thing ever. Everyone should be an entrepreneur and you can make 7 figures in 3 days. Yes, maybe that's true for some people. That wasn't my story. That wasn't my case. I had to get a 9 to 5 and get a good 9 to 5. And when I say good, like that could pay well enough to pay down my loans in a short time. Now, I do think for that season in my life, for that phase of life, I needed a 9 to 5. I could not deal with the complexity and the investments involved with running a business. Honestly, there was a part of me when I was going into business school that thought I was going to go the entrepreneurship route, but paying down my loan was a big reason that I went the 9 to 5 route. I will say it wasn't a sweet job. It wasn't a job where I was like waking up every day and say, I am living my dreams. No, it was hard, it was tough, but that was the job I needed for that phase of my life. So yes, I got a good job, very grateful for that privilege, and that helped me pay down my loans. Two, I just reduced my expenses as much as possible. I remember I got the job and I was going to live in New York because the job was in New York. And the arrangement that I had was that I will live with roommates. I was renting a house with like 2, 3 other roommates in New York. And I wasn't going to live in Manhattan or like the choicest parts of New York City. I was going to live a little outside just so I could pay low rent with roommates. That's what I had to do to pay my loans. Of course, the pandemic happened and last minute that whole plan didn't work. I ended up moving to Washington State. But the point is, I did what I had to do. Again, life is about seasons and it's okay to embrace the season that you're in. For me, that season of my life was all about living with roommates. Even though I didn't quite like living with roommates. I've had terrible experiences with roommates. But for that season of my life, that's what I had to do. So specifically, here's what I did. When I accepted that role, I was paid a sign-on bonus, which is typical in that industry. For those of you that are curious, I was working in management consulting. I got a bonus. And of course, I got a bonus for a job situated in the state of New York. And you know what that means tax-wise. So almost like 45% of what I got went into taxes straight up. I never saw it. It just went into some sort of state tax, federal tax, and local taxes and whatever. So taxes were really, really, hitting me hard when I worked for the New York office. So I got maybe 55% of my bonus amount, and it went straight to my loans. When I started the job and I got a paycheck, after checking for like the basics, rents and living expenses or food or those things, every other thing wiped out going to my loans. I had nothing left for myself. Again, I understood this wasn't a season of investing for me. This wasn't a season to buy anything. This wasn't a season to go all out on clothes and stuff like that. This was the season to pay down my loans. And I was crystal clear that that was my goal for that year. So every month, after sorting out the basic and maybe like sending something to my mom because I just wanted to make sure she was fine, everything else was towards my loans. Okay. And then the third thing was, at the end of each year, if you work in consulting or generally client services, at the end of the year, you get some sweet bonuses depending on how much the firm made that year. And if you work as a lawyer as well, that's the same thing, the same model. So depending on how much revenue and profits the firm made that year, you get some really sweet bonus. Okay. That's one part of working in client services that you enjoy, because at the end of the year you're like, wow, so I can get this amount of money just in one paycheck, really? So I got those. And again, my loans. So I've talked about my sign-on bonus, my monthly pay, I've talked about my annual bonus. Now the fourth thing, and this is what I call time and chance. We were in the pandemic and the firm was really trying to support as much as possible. So a lot of pay that we should get, maybe 6 months into the job or 12 months into the job, they paid us early just to support like the economic challenges that some people were facing because of the pandemic. So they paid us some funds or bonuses earlier than they should have. So I think there was one where I should have been paid 3 years into the job or something. I was paid in my first year. And again, that went into my loans. That was something that I didn't quite plan for. And so these four things were the things I did. Everything I got went into my loans. So that's one part. Beyond my job, I also started sharing online. When I started, everything was coincidence. I started sharing online a few months before graduation from business school. So at some point that evolved, even though my goal coming online was to just teach and share. I've always thought throughout my life, I've always been a teacher. So I've been teaching for a while, and the internet just provided this opportunity to teach more people about anything, any topic that I know about and stuff like that. So I started sharing on YouTube 5 years ago. And at some point that evolved into like a consulting business. So I had I wouldn't say it was comparable in any way to what I was making from my 9 to 5. Let's just be clear on that. I haven't made a lot of money online, but I'm just going to tell you. But I had that evolved into a consulting business for people looking to go to top schools in the United States, in Canada, in the UK. So I had a consulting business where I supported those people and helped them get into some of the best schools in the world. And I'm so proud of the testimonials that came out of that phase, okay? Yes, so I did that consulting business and got some revenue from that. But again, it was nothing compared to my cost and compared to like my income from my 9 to 5. But a season that I was so proud of, something I did out of nothing. I was so proud of that. So I also wanted to share that I made some income from that. But beyond the income, what that whole content creation did for me was, it was my creative outlet. It was my own way of doing something that wasn't work, that wasn't like my full-time job, and that wasn't because it felt like sometimes, it felt like my entire life was all about paying loans. And this content creation and consulting world, where I was helping potential students get into top schools across the world, that felt like a creative outlet for me. That felt like something different. So I think it's important that I share that, because as you are thinking about paying down your loans, you need to know that this whole debt payment thing could engulf your entire life. It could feel like, my life is just all about working and working this job that I may not love and just paying some bank. That's what I did to kind of help me through that season. But yes, it is hard. So all of that said, I want to acknowledge a couple of things. Most important being that it is hard. This is a hard journey. Just working hard and paying down loans, and it feels like what you're paying every month is not even scratching the surface of what you owe. It is hard. It is really hard, but stay the course. These sacrifices, these short-term sacrifices are so important for the life of freedom that you want. So keep making the sacrifices, stay consistent. That $1,000, $500 you pay every month, keep doing it. Stay the course. You know why you're doing this. I've finished paying my loans, I'll say 3-4 years ago, and it's very different now. I feel so much relief knowing that I don't have to worry about those loans anymore. Stay the course, stay consistent. These tiny actions are taking you towards your goal, and I'm here to support you if you are still on that journey. I'd love to hear how that is going for you. Please share in the comments what you're doing, what's helping you stay motivated, stay calm as you pay your loans, because it is hard. So share with someone else what one thing you've learned, one thing that has helped you through your journey of paying down your debt. So just thought I would share that quickly. Let me know if you want to know any part of that experience, and I'll be happy to share. But that's it for today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.